Why is it that most of the personal finance advice out there usually feels like it is written for someone with a financial degree and not someone with a full-time job and has zero interest in spreadsheet? Good. Because by the end of this video, you will have an entire money system simple enough to sketch on a napkin. And you will understand exactly why that simplicity is the whole point. It is not a shortcut. If a genuinely simple money plan sounds like relief, hit the like button right now. It tells me to keep making breakdowns like this. Here is what most people believe about their finances in order. It requires to be complicated, 1. It requires spreadsheet, 2. It requires tracking every single transaction. And then it requires constant willpower. But here is the secret. Scott Tape's contrarian claim. And it reframes the entire problem. The issue was never that people are bad at maths or bad at discipline. The issue is that most financial systems are too complicated to survive contact with real life. So many people abandon them for weeks after trying a few days to go with them. Pape's answer is a system so simple it fits on a back of a napkin, literally, because a plan you can actually remember and stick to beats a sophisticated plan you quietly stop following after 2 months. Why trust this? The author, Pape, grew up from a farm. He started his career on a trading floor, and he got a first-hand look at how complicated and predatory the financial industry can be towards the everyday people. He built this system for his own household first. They followed it, he produced massive results, then he refined it so that every other family can follow it, every sports team, and even governmental policy, before turning it into one of the best-selling finance books ever published in Australia. Subscribe now, because this channel breaks down exactly this kind of practical systems. The one designed to actually survive real life, not just looking good at theory. Now here is your roadmap, the 7 takeaways from the book. From the very first conversation you need to have all the way through what your money ultimately craves for. Now stick around for the 3rd takeaway, because it's the ultimate step Pape says most people are secretly terrified of, and it is far painful than expected. Now here are the 7 takeaways from this book, The Barefoot Investor. Takeaway number 1, the date night. Fix relationship before you fix money. Here's where Pape's deliberately starts, and it surprises people expecting a chapter about budgeting. Before any account is opened or any dollar moved, he has couples scheduled recurring the date night, a relaxed, no-pressure conversation about money, done somewhere pleasant, not at the kitchen table or under a fluorescent lightning with a stack of bills. Why start with a conversation instead of spreadsheets or balance books? Because money stress is consistently one of the biggest sources of conflict in relationships, and most of that conflict isn't really about the numbers. It's about 2 people operating from different assumptions. You can check out our book summary on Morgan House's book, The Psychology of Money. Chapter 1 of that book began to talk about how people's behavior with money surpasses people's intelligence about money, because everybody have a different history, different background. So that is why everybody relates with money differently. So a brilliant financial plan built by one partner in secret, then unveiled to a confused or a resistant spouse, tend to collapse at first. Think of it like two people trying to row the same boat in different directions. It doesn't matter how strong either rower is. If they are not synchronized, the boat barely moves. And both people end up exhausted and frustrated. One relaxed conversation done regularly is what gets the both oars pulling in the same direction. Why does this matter? Because every system in this book depends on both partners actually following it. And people don't follow plans they were never genuinely part of building. Once you are both actually on the same page, then you need somewhere simple to put that agreement into practice, which is exactly where the book's famous idea comes in. Takeaway number 2. The Serviette strategy. 3 buckets for every dollar. Now here is the core mechanism of the entire book, The Barefoot Investor. And it is deliberately drawn as a picture, not as a spreadsheet. Papace splits every dollar of income into 3 buckets. Bow for daily living and life, occasional splurges. Mojo for safety and peace of mind. And grow for long-term wealth that compound quietly in the background. So the buckets are 3. The name of the first one is Bo. The name of the second one is Mojo. The name of the third one is Grow. Why only 3 buckets? When most budgeting systems use a dozen of categories and strategies. Because more categories means more decisions, and more decision is exactly what makes people quit. 3 simple buckets is enough to hold in your head without a single app open, which means it's simple enough to actually maintain for years, and it's not just for the enthusiastic first month. Think of it like plumbing in a house. You don't need to understand every pipe behind the wall to know that water needs to reach the kitchen, the bedroom, and the greenhouse. 3 main lines, each with a clear destination, is enough to run an entire household. Added complexity doesn't make the water flow better, it just makes the system harder to fix when something goes wrong. This matters because the system that is simple can run on autopilot, checked for only a few minutes in a week, which frees up the mental energy people usually burn worrying about money and let them actually use it in their lives instead. But one of those 3 buckets exists specifically not because people are carrying something that has to be dealt with before Grow can do any real work. And that is where the next step gets uncomfortable. Takeaway number 3. Domino your debts. Destroy the card. Knock them down in order. Here is the step Pape says triggers the most anxiety before people actually do it. And most relief immediately come after. First, physically cut up your credit card, like use a razor, use a scissors, and use a knife, cut up your credit card. Then list every remaining debt from smallest to largest, and knock them down in that order using dedicated funds set aside specifically for that purpose. So why destroy the cards even before doing anything else? Because you cannot outpay a debt that is actively being refilled at the same time. Cutting the card first removes the option of quietly undoing your own progress the next time you are stressed or tempted. It's not a punishment, to remind us. It's a simple closing the leak before you start bailing out the water. Why smallest to largest instead of highest interest rate first? Some people do highest interest rate or the largest one first, but Pape says no, we'll do it from the smallest to the largest instead of the highest interest first. This is because, exactly like a roll of dominoes, the goal is momentum, not mathematical perfection. Knock down the first small domino, and the psychological win it produces makes the next slightly bigger domino easier to tip over to. By the time you are facing the largest debt on the list, you have built real momentum and real proof that the system works. Proof a purely interest rate optimized plan cannot produce until much later. Pape is even built in a small ritual here. Celebrating its payoff, of course, taking yourself out, buying yourself something small to celebrate. It literally burns the payoff bill. It sounds theoretical, but the celebration is doing a real psychological work, reinforcing the win so that you can actually feel the progress instead of just seeing a slightly smaller number on the page. So why does this matter? Because debt sitting quietly in the background is exactly what prevents the grow bucket from ever having a real room to work. Once those dominoes are falling, it's time to build the bucket that turns no debt into a genuine, durable peace of mind. Takeaway number 4. Build your mojo, a safety money that buys you peace of mind. Now here's the bucket that Pape treats as most sacred. Kept in a completely separate account at a different institution from your everyday banking, specifically so it's a little bit harder to touch on impulse. Mojo starts with an initial target, enough to cover a genuine emergency, and eventually grows towards covering several months of real-life expenses. So why keep it deliberately inconvenient to access? Because the whole point of Mojo isn't just the number sitting in the account. It's the psychological shift that happens once you know with certainty that a surprise or a sudden job loss can no longer instantly become a crisis. This is wonderful. And you have this peace of mind that even if the worst case scenario happens now, your children will not go out of school, your standard of living will not go down, your parents will not suffer, everything will still be fine for a few months. Money that is too easy to reach quietly gets nips away over time. You will say just this once, withdrawal after another, until the safety net has more holes than nets. And think of Mojo like a ballast in a ship. It doesn't power the ship forward, and from the deck, most passengers never think about it, but it's the exact thing that keeps the ship stable in the upright when unexpected waves hit. And without it, even a well-built ship can capsize in conditions a properly ballasted one would have sailed right through. This matters because Mojo is what makes every other financial decision in your life less frightening. Negotiating a raise, starting a side business, even simply sleeping at night. All of it gets easier once real emergencies stop feeling like a potential catastrophe. With debt gone and safety secured, the final piece of the serviette can finally do what it has always meant to do: grow quietly for decades. Takeaway number 5. Grow. Let low fees investment compound in the background. Here is the bucket built for the long game, and Pape keep the philosophy behind it refreshingly unglamorous. Consistent contributions into low-fee, broadly diversified investments, left alone to compound for years without being second-guessed every single time the market wobbles. investors that are not long-term in their mindset, every dip they panic, every run they want to add more. But no. Why the obsession with fees specifically, some people may ask? Because fees are one of the only variables in investing you can actually control with certainty. Market returns are unpredictable no matter who is managing the account. Fees are guaranteed, compounding against you exactly the way returns compound for you. A small percentage skimmed off every year after year, can quietly consume a shocking share of your total wealth by the time you actually need it. Think of it like a small hole in a fuel tank on a very long road trip. It seemed negligible one day, but multiply that tiny leaks every single mile of the trip, and by the destination, you've lost far more fuel than the hole ever looked capable of draining. Low fee index investing is simply choosing the tank without the hole. So why does this matter? Because growth isn't meant to be actively managed or checked daily. It's specifically meant to be boring, automated, and left alone, which is precisely why most people who succeed with it never talk about it much. Quiet compounding rarely makes for an exciting story, but it's usually the one that works. Growing your money faster isn't about smart investing, although sometimes the faster level available is the one people overlook entirely, sitting right in their own job. Takeaway number 6. Boost your income before you chase a bigger purchase. Here is a step that surprises people expecting another chapter purely about cutting expense. Pape spends real energy on the other side of the equation entirely, actively increasing what you earn because there is a hard ceiling on how much you can cut, but functionality, no ceiling on how much you can actually earn. Why prioritize this before a major purchase like a home? Because a bigger income raises every single number of the Soviet strategies simultaneously. Mojo gets small breathing room, Mojo feels faster, and grow compounds on a larger base from the start. Cutting expenses optimizes a fixed pie. Boosting income makes the whole pie bigger. That additional room tends to make every other financial decision easier by comparison. Now think of it like a widening river instead of just removing obstacles from your current one. You can spend years carefully clearing debris from a narrow stream and only move a modest amount of mud. Widening the riverbed itself, even modestly, can suddenly far outweigh the flow through without nearly as much effort going on. This matters because most people focus entirely on the spending side of their finances and almost never treat their own earning potential as something worth actively developing, even though it's frequently the single highest leverage lever available to them. Once income, debt, safety, and growth are working together, though the final piece of the plan is one that gives the entire system the actual meaning. Takeaway number 7. Leave a legacy. Money as a tool, not the finishing line. Here is where the book ultimately lands, and it echoes something Pape's returns to throughout the book. The idea that financial security was never meant to be the final destination. It's a foundation that finally lets you think beyond your own immediate survival towards what your money can actually build or protect over the long run, including people beyond yourselves. So why end here instead of simply stopping once the buckets are full, because a fully funded Mojo account and a growing bucket sitting untouched forever with no purpose beyond the numbers itself misses the entire point of building a system in the first place. Pape's philosophy is treat wealth as something meant to eventually be directed somewhere meaningful. Security for your family and education for your kids. Generosity towards the cause you care about, not simply accumulated as the end itself. And think of it like planting an orchard, not just a single tree for your own use. A single tree feeds you. An orchard, tended properly, keeps protecting and then producing fruit for the people who come after you, no longer the one tending it. So why does this matter? Because it reframes every step mentioned in this video. The date night, the bucket, the dominoes, the Mojo fund, quiet compounding. None of all these were really about the numbers themselves. It was about buying the freedom, eventually, to stop worrying about the money entirely and start using it for something bigger. So here is what you asked for, and here is what you are going to take away today. Fix the relationship around money before you fix the numbers. Keep the whole system down to 3 simple buckets. Destroy the cards and knock out debts down from the smallest to the largest. Build a Mojo fund that actually buys you peace of mind. Let the grow compound quietly through low fees. Actively boost your income rather than cutting expenses only. And remember, the entire system was always meant to serve something bigger than the balance itself. Before this video, a solid money system probably sounded complicated. A solid money system probably sounded complicated enough to avoid starting altogether. But now you have one simple enough strategy that you can sketch on a napkin tonight. The exact one that helped a huge number of families every day. Pick one bucket to set up this week. Even the opening separate Mojo account. That single account is the beginning of the whole serviette strategy. If drawing your own version of the serviette feels easier with a template in hand, that is exactly why I have put together links in the description.